Polish independent think tank. And these series Thursdays we meet to comment on what is pandemic doing to the international affairs, to the world, with some specific topic. Today the topic is India. So we would like to hear more how India, the largest economy on earth, is handling this period, and also how the Indians see the future. We have a great guest with us, and I'm so happy to have him with us, Professor Chintamani Mahapatra. Professor, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for agreeing on this session, live session on Facebook. I hope also some friends from India listen to us as well. And Professor Mahapatra is the rector of JNU, Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. So he speaks to us from Delhi. What's the time in Delhi, by the way?
8:30 in the evening.
So not so bad. So still we can have some, it's a prime time actually for you.
Yes, yes.
Very good. And Professor Mahapatra is actually not only rector of the university, but it's also a very well-known scholar. His field is American studies. He did research in the US, in India, but also in China. So I hope to use this knowledge, Professor, to be able to discuss not only India, but also the international affairs and the global order today. And Professor Mahapatra is also a president of a think tank called Kalinga Institute for Indo-Pacific Studies, with whom we partner. So we are very, very happy of this partnership. And thank you, Chintamani, that you agreed for this cooperation with us. So it's a European-Indian partnership already happening. And welcome with me also my colleague from the team, Agnieszka Ostrowska, who is a program director in our center. So let's start. First question, Professor, is very obvious. I would like you to brief us about what is happening now in India, how such a huge country, also by population, 1 billion, almost 400 million people, how do you implement a lockdown?
You know, I agree. Your point of view that India is the largest country in terms of the number of people who are being dealt with by our government in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, the number of people who are under the national lockdown in India is more than any other country, including China. So it is a very big test case for India. But let me tell you that this particular pandemic came to India a little late. It all started in China, in Wuhan. The whole world knows it. And we have been struggling very hard to contain it. Our Prime Minister took the right step at the right time and began to announce a national lockdown. And that is why it has been contained in a very, very nice way. Otherwise, the number of people who had been affected would have gone into hundreds of thousands. At the moment, about 33,000 plus people are infected. But if you see the death rate in India compared to the number of people who are infected, it is very, very low, much lower than that of what is happening in Europe and in America, roughly about 3 to 4%.
It's around 1,000, right? It's 1,000,
yeah,
something like
about
that,
1,000
right?
plus, which is 3 to 4% of the number of people who are infected, only 3 to 4%. And the recovery rate of those who have been hospitalized, the recovery rate is quite impressive. It is 25% plus. And in fact, let me also share this news that the number of people who have been hospitalized and who require ventilators is less than 1%. To be more specific, 0.33%. The number of people who need oxygen in the hospital is less than 2%. And the number of people who require to be put in ICU is less than 3%. And many people would ask why it is happening like this in India. Probably large number of people in India are young, and the immunity of the Indian people are pretty good. But more important is timely step by the government of India to announce a lockdown. It is a very painful exercise. Who would know better than European countries, particularly Italy and Spain and France and Germany and even UK, and of course every other member of the European Union. So it is a very painful exercise, but I think India is doing pretty well.
Yes, I'm impressed by these figures because also, taking into consideration the scale of this operation, the scale of the population in India, and also a lot of differences between the states, south, north, and then also, let's be very open, India also has a lot of very poor people. Can you
Hmm.
also explain to us how in practice this lockdown looks like?
You know, what is interesting is this particular pandemic is not targeting just the poor. The richest and the most powerful people, even in terms of their political position, are also getting infected with this particular virus. And in fact, let me share this view of mine that if you see the number of people who have been infected and the geographical location of those countries, out of G7 countries, group of seven richest countries in the world, G6 have been badly affected by it. Only Canada is a little lying low. Otherwise, all other G6 countries have been badly affected by this pandemic. So in India, it is true that a lot many poor people are there, and in fact there are certain slum areas also, and lot many people are the internal migrants who have moved out of their hometowns from villages or the towns of the state and gone into other states. They are also relatively daily wage earners, so they are also pretty uh, serious victims of this particular pandemic. But interestingly, people who are poor, who have been stranded in different cities, who went as migrant laborers, the COVID 19 positive are not very high. And in fact, some of them were brave enough to walk hundreds of miles because they did not have the job anymore. They did not want to stay back in a different land without adequate amount of facilities. They walked back home and they did not die. They went back home. And other people who the government could catch them on the way saying, no, 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 this is dangerous. Even if a few people are having this coronavirus, it could infect so many other people, so you better stay back. And the government is feeding about 2.2 million people, and the government has created shelters, about 600,000 of them, and we are trying our best to take care of them so that somehow they manage this difficult time.
Yes, but also India faces the problem of moving, because what we've heard also from the media, it was reported worldwide that some of the Indians were stuck physically because of the lockdown. So I just wonder how the situation looks now after a certain time. Was it anything done for them to reach out, to the families, to the villages they come from?
There are two kinds of Indians who have been stranded. One, of course, in foreign countries, and the government of India took very prompt step, sent our aircraft, brought them back home, and put them in quarantine, and then they went back home. And the internal migrants who are there, when the lockdown was there and the time was very, very serious time, and anything could have happened, the government said no, you cannot move. But we realized that now that situation is getting better, and relatively our performance is also okay. And the people are really suffering because they're missing their family members. And in any case, they're not having their jobs. So the government has made an announcement already, and they will be moved into their own respective homes. And different states will take the responsibility. Suppose from Odisha, some people are there in Gujarat, then the governments will take care of them. So after proper sanitization of the vehicles in the government buses, all these fellows will be checked first whether they are infected or not infected. Then they can board the bus and they can go back to their state. In the state again they will be checked. If they are okay, they will go to home. If it is necessary, they will be in quarantine for about 14 days. So this movement of people is just going to begin very soon so that the hardship is taken care of.
Right, and tell me then for the nearest future, weeks and months to come, what is the plan in India to go back to a normal or a new normal? How do you also see the situation from your individual point of view?
All right. Let me outline first what the government of India has done, what kind of policy it has adopted to come to terms with this pandemic. Number one, like many other countries, test, quarantine, contact, trace, and treat people. Many countries are doing that. Now, many questions are being raised around the world. No, 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 India's number could be very high, but they're not testing everyone. Testing a billion plus people is not a joke. If the Americans are not able to test adequately, and there are many complaints in the USA saying that if India tests, the number would be more. So let us not talk about hypothetical issues, but the fact remains that whatever we can, we are doing our best. Apart from this test, quarantine, contact, trace, and treat, what we are doing is we are telling people to do yoga, and we are also telling them how to maintain mental balance and preserve their mental health. Then we are giving priority to the people who are already infected, and not to other people who also need hospitalization and need some kind of surgery, some kind of treatment. We are saying this is secondary priority. Right now, COVID 19 is first priority. And then there are many people who are suspecting that the so called health workers could be carrying the virus, and they are under attack. So the government is trying its best to protect those who are helping others, particularly the health workers, the doctors, the nurses, and other workers. Then what the government has done is it has, instead of going state-wise, it has gone district-wise. Now, in March, on 25th of March, when we went for the lockdown, roughly about 82 districts out of 700 plus had COVID 19. And subsequently, in a matter of 2 months, the number of districts rose to 400 plus. But more than 300 districts are green zone. Taking a clue from the traffic light, the government has created three different types of zones. One is the red zone, orange zone, and the green zone. In green zone, there is absolutely no problem. In the red zone, they are the hot spots, and we are very, very careful in maintaining the quarantine and lockdown. And then the orange zone, where the situation is not as bad as the red zone. And the government of India wants that red zone should slowly turn into orange and then to green zone. However, as and when the government realized that simply fighting the coronavirus is not adequate, it is having tremendous amount of stress for the society. The social consequences and the economic consequences are very, very difficult. We need the food. For that, agricultural laborers must go to the field. We need certain basic amenities of life, so some industries must open up. So that is why now, as in selective areas, particularly where there are no problems, some industries are going to start soon, maybe by tomorrow or day after tomorrow. And some of the agricultural farmers in green zone will go back to the field. So this is the harvest season also. And in the meantime, a large number of students in so many universities and colleges and schools in India. We have more than 9,000, universities. So all the educational institutions have closed, and we are trying our best in whatever available resources we have to keep the students engaged through online mode. Then, of course, all popular places like restaurant and cultural activities, tourism, all are banned. We just so in this way we are trying our best to resolve the problem as soon as possible. Nobody can predict what is going to happen, and when the lockdown is going to be completely lifted. It is going to be a staggered way, slowly.
What we heard, Professor, is from Europe here. We heard that India, at least until July, will be closed. We will not have an airplane connection. So I don't know if you can confirm it, or if there is any other news available.
Actually, about 70% of airline travel is closed around the globe. Now, India has maintained the national lockdown and it has not allowed the international travel yet. That will all depend. See, all our metropolitan cities like Chennai and Mumbai and Delhi are having so many hotspots. So at the moment, we are not even thinking about it. We are waiting for the right moment. First, the people of India should be able to travel from one place to other. The educational institutions must open and life becomes normal. Then we'll open up the international travel. However, from countries which have been terribly affected by this coronavirus pandemic, it will take a longer time for the travelers to come to India.
Yes, what you can tell us, I mean, that we can only imagine, the scale of this incredibly immense operation which is going on in India. When you compare India, you can compare it rather to Europe than any of the European countries. India is so big. So it's a subcontinent. So it's really kind of a huge exercise for the government and for the state governments as well. We have also some questions from the audience. Thank you very much. Also, Indians are following us and sending greetings to you and to
Okay.
us. We have a question concerning big cities from Kamil Pilishko. It's about cities like Delhi, Mumbai. We are talking about 16 million people, 20 million people. It's like countries in Europe, So, what is the opinion? Is it possible really to expect getting back to normal pretty soon, or rather, like we also in Europe discuss it, this pandemic will last for long, and also the cities will have a lot of issues with this problem?
In the midst of the pandemic, it is always good to have positive thinking. Now, if you compare this with the Spanish flu of 1918, which continued for about 2 years, and more than 500 million people were infected around the globe, and roughly about 40 to 50 million people died, and more than 600,000 Americans died in that Spanish flu. So someday, even this coronavirus is going to come to an end. But at the moment, the general understanding around the world is there is a possibility of this pandemic returning again in fall or in winter. So one has to be extremely careful in handling the situation and not hurry up. We all understand the economic consequences is terrible for the big industries and for even the common people and the poor people. But first priority should go to life. Then it should go to property and money. So at the moment, the heavy cost that we are paying, it is worth it because we don't want unnecessarily large number of people to just die. Now the question is about big cities like in Delhi and Mumbai and how are we handling it? This is complete lockdown. And in fact, if you look at what's happening in the USA, in very many capitals, large number of people are coming and they're gathering there and they defy the lockdown and say, open up, lift the lockdown. In India, we don't have that kind of problem. Only for a few days we had a problem because some of the migrant workers, because there was a rumor that trains are going to start, they rushed to the train station and there was a problem, but very quickly we handled them and we put them in shelter homes and we gave them food also. So the government in Maharashtra and the government in Delhi, with the help of the central government, are managing it pretty well, pretty well.
Well, I imagine that no one knows what really happens. There is a suggestion from one of our viewers that it's also India is handling it so well also because Indians are very seriously treating this threat, and they are very responsible. So this lockdown really works, which was not maybe the case in the case of all the European countries. We know, everyone knows that, for example, in case of Italy or even France, the treatment of this illness was not very serious at the very beginning, and that's maybe why we had such high numbers of infected people. Thank you for this suggestion. One more question also from the audience is about the control, because we are all discussing, the fact that politicians, the governments, use this moment, use it. They have to implement several measures of control during pandemic. But the question is about what will happen in the future, and if this is not the threat for democracies. India is a democracy. So, do you see any issue around controlling people after, once the pandemic is over? Also taking into consideration the case of China, your neighbor, but also other Asian countries like South Korea, where the scale of invigilation of people, of control through the technology, is really high. How do you see that?
In a country like China, where you have the Communist Party in power, the control over the people was tremendous even before this epidemic started. It has always been there. But in a country like India, where people love liberty so much, they are ready to go on strike, demonstration for, fulfillment of the demands and things like that. Now, controlling the people is very difficult. Ultimately, what is important is generating certain kind of consciousness among the people, what is good for them, what is bad for them. So we do it through more and more persuasion, through advice, through suggestion. And of course, some of them who defy the rules and regulations and put the lives of other people in danger, they are taken care of by the law and order machinery. So in India, I think even people who are not very highly educated, even people who are living in different villages, they are politically and otherwise so conscious that they come and vote regularly and change the governments. So they're political conscious. So in fact, some of the politicians who did not abide by the lockdown rules, they were disliked by many people, and their future election is in danger. But this is not just happening in India. Even we saw on the Twitter how even the vice president of the USA went to the hospital and he did not use the mask. Right. So similar things are happening in India, but by and large, people are very conscious and they're very law abiding, and they're only worried about their bread and butter. And the government is trying its best. The priority government gives is to the poor people. That is why, unlike in the United States, where you have billions of dollars of stimulus package. Here, our package is going to help the poor people first. The small and medium scale industries, which are in dire need of help, certainly the government of India will help, but it is buying time and weighing the pros and cons. So, by and large, we have been managing it pretty well in India.
Chintamani, can you elaborate a little bit more about this package? Because this is also something very much expected from people, from employees, but also from employers, from the companies of all the sizes. In Europe, we know that we will face a huge crisis, and every single government, offered something to these two groups, both the companies and the employees. What are the exact measures proposed by the Indian government? And this is only on the federal level, or it goes also at the states level?
It is by and large federal level, but let me first explain the problem that may happen, because the government is still discussing this. It is going to start soon, about $39 billion of assistance to small and medium scale industries. The whole big issue is whether this assistance is going to reach the right kind of people, the target. In the United States, this $2 trillion, sorry, 300 plus $billion of assistance, which was supposed to go to the small and medium scale industries, they found that big industries are applying for the loan, and one company got $10 million, the another company got $20 million, and of course, finally, when they were caught, they're returning the money. So identifying the target is actually difficult. So the money should not go into the wrong hands. In India, the problem is more difficult because large section of people, large section of economy actually is in the informal sector. So getting the proper identification is very difficult. And a large number of people who are the migrant laborers and work on a daily wage basis in not at home but in some other state, even how to identify them, how to give them money, it is very difficult. For the poor people, what the government did, the Modi government had created bank account for millions of people, and the money was directly transferred to their bank account. But those who are working, and they're not working in their home place but elsewhere. How to manage this package so that it is not pilfered, it doesn't go into the wrong hands. The government is still, discussing that, but roughly about $39 billion are going to be spent to help them because they are the backbone of the economy.
Yes, of course. I mean, I think for all of us, the economic aspect is now the key, just after the health. And India's economy is also based on very, very small micro, entities and individuals who do a lot of tiny little jobs. And I can only imagine if all this is stopped under the lockdown, there is also an issue for a lot of Indians, how to earn money, and the social security is not really covering all the people. So can you a little bit tell me what is the nearest future for these small little businesses? When you can see them in all Indian cities, the rickshaw guys, the small shops who sell little products. So how do you see the future of them?
Not only the rickshaw puller and the grocery shop owners and the food seller on the roadside, uh, there are so many, millions of people who are doing very small business. Now, people who are at home also they realize that except the groceries and the medicine, there are many other essentials of life and daily life that they are not able to have access to. So the goal is to lift the lockdown as quickly as possible so that people do not suffer. And a large number of people who have serious health issues now they cannot be prevented from going to the hospital for a longer time. So we are trying very many ways of helping them through, you know, by making the doctors accessible through telephone or WhatsApp, and for medical advice, the so-called telemedicine thing is going to pick up very soon. And even those who are online suppliers, they are going to start supplying certain items to different places. So it is going to be done in a very staggered way. And some of the things which people may not be allowed to go out, but it can be delivered at home. And in fact, in so many residential areas where there are serious problem, and even if there are few cases or maybe a couple of families having this and the area is locked down, every day milk and groceries are delivered at home. So it will take. We are hoping that by end of June things are going to be much better off. Although the most difficult section of the people who are going to suffer, whether the lockdown is lifted or not, are going to be the students and the faculty members, the educational institutions. It's because some pockets have a lot of hotspots, and the students, for example, to my university, the students come from across India. So once we lift the lockdown, if we open the university immediately, students from Maharashtra cannot come. Students from Telangana or Andhra Pradesh or Tamil Nadu may not be able to come. So we are waiting for a time where that educational institutions should be open. That can be done only when we are assured that people will abide by the social distance norms and other regulations, and they can come and lead a normal life.
And I just wonder also about the society, Indian society, because India is a very spiritual country. A lot of Europeans go there to, feel something, to feel this kind of spiritual energy. So I just wonder how this works in the time of pandemic. Do you see any new behaviors of the communities? Some social help. Some people give to other people. Something which you can say, in Asia is maybe even more visible, that there is a kind of a community sense during difficult time. Do you see that? Could you give me some examples of these kind of behaviors?
There are large number of non-governmental organizations which are doing fantastic job in helping the people. Even the religious groups and cultural organizations are also doing tremendous amount of social service and helping people, preparing food. Community kitchens are open, And although it takes a long time, sometimes the queue for the food for the poor people can stretch up to 2 miles. But there are big pots, people are there, they're using all norms of social distance and using the mask and cooking for the masses and giving them free food. And of course, there are spiritual leaders. You very correctly said that a large number of Indians are religious and spiritual, and this is across the religions. And through television and through internet, through WhatsApp, they are keeping in touch with the religious gurus, which give them a little bit of solace and peace of mind. So when the mind has become unstable, then the domestic violence can be expected. But in India, I think people are able to manage it. They pray, they meditate, they listen to all kinds of speeches by the spiritual gurus, um, and in fact, internet has become a facilitator. There are many things that we do not know otherwise. You don't have to go to the temple. You can even put a temple's name on the internet, and you can see the pujas or the prayers are going on. So this is, in fact, mental stability is extremely important at the time of pandemic when people cannot go out. It has never happened before in world history, probably, except during that pandemic, that Spanish flu. Even then, the world is more globalized today than before. People are more used to go out and become extrovert than before. So they are missing more than what people did in 1918 and 1919. That was a different time altogether. So that is why mental health is more critical, more important. Meditation, yoga, and prayer, whether they are Christians or they are Muslims or they are Hindus, these are good medicine.
Professor, while talking about mental health, I would like to ask you, do you see a lot of side effects of the pandemic, not in the sense of health as such, but in the sense of psychological, I would say, burden put on people? Because what we can observe here in Europe is that like domestic violence is growing, that also internet crime is bigger than before because all these criminals, they had to change into internet. So what are these side effects, not necessarily connected with economy as such and with health
Yeah, one, of course, you're very right.
as such?
You are very, very right. Internet is a great facilitator, but internet also gives a lot of opportunity to people who are involved in cybercrime. For example, even the adolescent boys and girls, when they have nothing to do, they're all staying at home and they have the free time, they have the smartphone. What kind of program they're watching, how those programs are shaping up their mind, it is so difficult to control and manage. And because of the mobile phone, the direct interaction between human beings have really gone down. In a particular house, if there are 4 members and they are sitting in different places, sometimes they communicate through WhatsApp phone. Oh, my little daughter, come down for dinner. Instead of walking up and talking to the daughter, you call her down for dinner. So this is actually a bad trend. Now, because of the lockdown, whatever socializing was happening between families, between friends, either at home or at parties or in the restaurants, all those things are going to be a thing of the past for another 6 months to 1 year and maybe more. So behavior of people are going to change. And the kind of stuff they're learning, there are many people that would not know what is good and what is bad. And there are people who know what is bad, but they're attracted towards bad things. So this is going to take a pretty psychological toll and is going to affect the human behavior. And that is why the psychologists and other experts in the field should now be thinking very deeply about it, how to handle this kind of situation. Can't hear you. Yeah,
Hello, can
yeah,
you
yeah.
hear me now? I would like to change the subject a little bit and ask you about geopolitical implications of the pandemic. What do you think the distribution of power between countries will look like after the crisis is over, because it seems that the United States, they kind of have abandoned its leadership position, and China is very active, offering help, sending experts, offering equipment. So who do you think will be the new emerging leader after the crisis is over?
I personally think that it is going to be a leaderless world for quite some time. The United States has lost its leadership position. Imagine what happened after World War II. The Marshall Plan and the European Economic Recovery Program running into $13-14 billion at that time. And today, the US does not even have a proposal of some kind of mega proposal to lead people, lead countries, and do something about this coronavirus. They are going completely solo on their own. And I was shocked when Donald Trump, the president of the USA, offered some money to a German company and said that you try to get a vaccine as quickly as possible, but you must sell it to only America. And incidentally, that particular company had already got money from the German government and said no. So if German government gives money to have a vaccine for German people and the Americans for only American people, God save the world. So I think in the post-COVID-19 phase, nationalism is going to take charge. And this is not going to be good for liberal institutionalism. Now, countries are going to be more and more selfish. It is going to affect even the supply chain. Now, most of the supply chain rooted in China, hello, yeah. Most of the supply chain which is rooted in China, many companies are going to get out of China. Japan has already announced $2 billion for the Japanese companies to relocate. And Donald Trump is also going to do the same thing. Germany has given a kind of demand to China how much money they owe to Germany because of this COVID-19 case. So nationalism is going to take charge. Leadership is very difficult. Americans have lost their leadership quality right now under this dispensation. And China is not acceptable to a large number of countries. Out of desperation,
like India, for example. What is your perception of China after this pandemic? How the Indians look at China now? If it's not the new leader, what is China to you now?
I think even if the Chinese are trying their best to restore their economy, and they may do a better job than many European and American countries, even then, China is not going to be able to lead the world the way the United States has done. It does not have the experience at all. Number two, because of the perception around the world that this virus started in Wuhan, Chinese government took a lot of time to tell it to the world. And that is why the pandemic has spread around the globe, practically to every country in the world. And in the meantime, most of the countries which are going to suffer from the economic downturn, the massive Chinese investment in CPEC, for example, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, or the BRI, Belt and Road Initiatives, they are going to go down the drain. Countries will not have enough money, and the whole big dream of having the BRI is just not going to be feasible. It is going to be either delayed or it may be denied. So those who think that China is going to replace the United States as a leader, their thinking is actually wrong in my view. So China is not acceptable as a leader, and the US has lost the leadership this thing. So ultimately, it is going to be a multipolar world where some of the responsible countries will have to take charge. How they are going to do, we have to think. My main worry is European Union is facing an existential threat. Just recall the response from Italy to the whole idea about having a European fund to rescue the Italian economy, and what was the position of no country is prepared. So after Brexit, now the Italian experience, I'll not be surprised if Italy would decide that I'll get out of the European Union. Then what happens? Then look at the Middle East. It is in deeper crisis. Oil prices have now halved, and their revenue has gone down. So it is going to create a lot of social unrest. The government cannot give subsidies anymore in the Middle East and oil-producing countries. Look at Russia and Central Asia. The ruble has lost its value tremendously vis-a-vis dollar. So most of the Central Asian Republic fellows who are working in Russia in the oil company, other companies, when they're sending them money home, the value of the money is less. So the only good area, potentially rich area, is going to be again Indo-Pacific area. In the Indo-Pacific area, if you see the performance of China, India, South Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Singapore are relatively better. So the World Bank says, this is the World Bank or IMF, or some forecast. In 2020, the global GDP is going to go down into negative, -3, either 0 or minus in Europe and America. In Asia, it is going to be just above 0, maybe 1.9 for India and a little less in China. And by 2021, the forecast says China will grow by 9%, India will grow by 7%, South Korea is doing fantastically well. So the wealth distribution will take place in a different way. And in this kind of flux, I don't think China is going to flex its muscle and say, I'm the leader and just follow me. There will be no takers. Look at Australia's position.
Right. So if you are a political scientist, so we can really discuss the new global order. Everybody says that this pandemic can be this turning point, actually, and we have already entered a new era. There will be no really coming back to the business as usual. There will be a huge modification of our world. Certain processes have started already earlier, but certain processes are speeding up now. And if I understood you correctly, you see that it will be a long period now without any leader. It will be like, without the US, but without China neither. Then second point would be that there will be a lot of problems, issues, social unrests, and also economy issues everywhere, actually. But out of all these countries, Southeast Asia seems to have better chances, right, to develop. Europe, yes, I agree with you, we have our internal problems, and also the audience, there is a question about how we in Eastern and Central Europe see China during pandemic and after pandemic. We have also the same hesitations like India. We are also trying the same like India, trying to play a swing state. We are not a state in Europe, but we are in between the US and China. We would love to be close to the US and make stronger our transatlantic partnership. But we would like also be partners to China. We are observing the situation, but we have to do our homework in Europe. So it's a lot of internal issues we are having now, we are discussing right now. However, I agree with you that we have to all prepare for a huge, difficult time. So the question for me would be how India, as a country, very complicated, very vibrant, very difficult to govern, actually, with such a huge population, which I think already has beaten China. It's 50-50, China and India as far as population now. But the forecast is that India will be the most populated country on earth, and it's the largest democracy. So how India and Indian elites, Indian politicians see the role of India and what game India is going to play?
Number one, we are going to try our best to get as much foreign investment as possible in the post-COVID-19 era. The companies which are going to shift out of China, partly because of the coronavirus episode, and partly because the rate of labor is now pretty high in China, we'll try to invite those companies to India, and so Make in India proposal can become more robust. Right now, that is going to be our goal. And number two, India is not only the largest country in terms of population, or going to be the largest country in terms of population. India has the real demographic dividend. Large number of people are pretty young people. The aging population in China, Japan, in some of the European countries, many more than what you see in India. So I think this population dividend will help India in a very big way. Number three, some companies are going to sink after this, because of this pandemic, and some companies are going to do very well. And one company that I can visualize doing very well in the post-COVID-19 or in fact in the midst of the crisis, is the IT sector, both hardware as well as software, because people will like to stay connected. People would like to continue their business without physical proximity. So this sector is going to grow, where I think India's credentials are pretty good, and India will do very well there also.
I
Number
remember,
three.
I remember the quote from one conference in Delhi, said by your foreign minister that every fifth, I think, or every sixth IT guy in the world is an Indian. Doesn't matter where this person
Yeah,
is, but it's an
yeah.
Indian origin person. So you are very strong in this field. So it's good to you, for you. But it's also another factor that India also seems to be quite strong in pharmaceutical and in medical equipment and in healthcare. Europe just discovered that we are very dependent. We here in Europe from Chinese and Indian suppliers. So that's another, field you can be very strong in the global economy.
Correct. Let me give an example. When a new medicine is invented by a scientist, it takes about 10 years to market it. And for that, to make it marketable, you need tremendous amount of investment, where big companies can only give. Then the big companies will claim the IPR, and then they will say for next 20 years you cannot manufacture this medicine. This is our IPR. And after 20 years, then any country can go for generic medicine. What India does, India tries its best to manufacture medicine at as cheaper rate as possible, because we have so many relatively poor people in India, for whom the medicine must be affordable. Now, because of the pandemic, now the world knows how India's policy of manufacturing generic medicine can save lives. In India, we have two types of health security system. One, of course, for the elite people, the rich people, which is best in the world, and it is much cheaper to have a heart surgery or any other sophisticated transplantation in India than in New York or Los Angeles. So, in fact, many people from Western countries also come to India and take the benefit out of that. But at the lower level, although we have so many hospitals and we try to cater to the needs of the common people, we have to spend more. We have to spend more. So that is why I think India is going to focus in manufacturing these medicines for the benefit of Indians and for the benefit of the global population.
And I must ask you at this point about how you see the India-Europe relations, because we were supposed to have a summit in March. It was cancelled, of course, because of pandemic. We were also expecting the visit of the Prime Minister of India to Brussels. Then we also we are working on encouraging your Prime Minister to come to Central Eastern Europe as well. How do you see the future of these relations from the Indian perspective? How the Indians visualize, or what is the perception of Europe after pandemic?
Now we think Europe is different from European Union. There are there are some countries in Europe which are going to do pretty well, and some of the countries will continue to suffer. But if European Union stays, of course, European Union is a very positive partner for India for a variety of reasons. Number one, there is, the historical linkage between India and Europe is much deeper than India's linkages with the United States. And Europeans understand India much better. Number two, India always looked at European Union as a potential uh, cohesive actor, where the European Union has not been successful in terms of defense, security, and political and diplomatic issues. European Union is too divided, right? But when the pandemic is over, in the post-pandemic era, the experiences of Europe are going to be important for India, and the way India handled the pandemic also important for Europe, and European countries, European industries will look at India as a growth area. Now, because of our whatever achievement we have done in terms of our industrial capacity, in terms of our encouraging the foreign investment in India, I think European countries are going to look at India as a prospective economic partner. The way China is flexing its muscle in its neighborhood, the way China is trying to have a system by which it is going to create debt crisis around the world, the BRI project is nothing but a debt trap. Increasingly, countries are realizing it, including in Eastern Europe. So the Chinese money comes, the Chinese technician come, the Chinese engineers come, the Chinese laborers come, they build something, and the countries are becoming rentier state. But in case of India, it is more transparent, it is more law based, it is more rule based, and India is a democracy. Europeans are also democrats. So I see a very bright future in, in the near future. Now, although we could not have the summit because of the pandemic, I'm sure now everybody is now using the internet medium for even summit meeting. So if Narendra Modi can talk to the chief ministers at one go through video conferencing, and if Putin can talk to different regions using that, I think this summit. In fact, I would recommend that the summit should take place in the midst of the pandemic between India and the European Union leaders.
It's a very good suggestion. Also, because your leader Narendra Modi is very well known of being very active in social media. He was even active before Donald Trump was starting to send first tweets. Narendra Modi was already there, and holograms meetings, which were very often happening during the election campaigns in India. So we know all that. So maybe it's a good suggestion. We have also a question from the audience concerning international organizations, which is also a very good point also to make. As you know, as we know, everyone knows that Donald Trump is very skeptical, and he also cut financial contribution of the United States to the United Nations, to the World Health Organization. So the question would be also about the future of these organizations, and also it's a question about multipolar world, because we are all having doubts if, number one, this is a reality, or we have a bipolar world, United States and China, because this rivalry is really visible, and we are feeling uncomfortable, we in Europe, but also you in India, to look at those two sides, and sometimes even be pushed to choose. We don't like it. We didn't want to choose. We would like to keep the world multipolar. But the question would be if this is possible, if this is really we are able to implement it. European Union is itself a very good example of a exercise, which is a multipolar exercise, which is a construction to avoid conflicts, to avoid tensions between the countries, thanks to mutual understanding and making compromises, which are very difficult, which is this experiment, especially in bad times like now, it's difficult, but it's working. It brought to Europe 70 years of peace and prosperity. So we now all put the question to ourselves, what to do, what are the best elements to continue this project in the new era, in the era where the states, where the countries, strong countries like the United States, like China, but also India, which is now an important power not only in the region but also globally, play more and more important role. We have still Russia, we have newcomers like in your region, Indonesia, we have Brazil, we have African continent rising. So the question would be if multipolar world is still the case. And the future of the international organizations is a big question mark. We also discussed the effectiveness of World Health Organization. Is this organization delivering during pandemic? But there are many people who say that, of course, there is no other structure available if the globe wants really to somehow think about the global challenges together. And we have certain precedents like Paris Agreement, where definitely most of the countries, almost all the countries on earth, were able to agree on something. So that's something European Union stresses, and we are very strong believers of this kind of approach to global organizations. Unfortunately, I think we lost Professor Mahapatra. I think the connection is lost. So thank you very much, the audience, for all these questions. Thank you, Sweta Kumari, for the question on international relations. Thank you, Agnieszka, also for joining us and having questions. Indian behavior, Indian way how they handle this crisis is incredibly amazing for us. The scale and also the efforts the Indian government is doing, but also the society. This is something we will be watching very carefully, and we keep fingers crossed that there will be no second phase, or if the second phase, it will be not so tough, neither for India nor for Europe. So stay with us. Hope you will join us also for other talks. We have the meetings every Tuesday, starting from the 5th of May. So those who have time, please join us on Tuesday. It will be a meeting on Facebook on international affairs. Sometimes we do it in Polish, sometimes we do it in English. So please stay with us on our Facebook. Thank you very much.